Hi there, welcome to my channel. I'm gonna make a guide to wildflowers, and in this one will be kind of for whichever region you're in, whatever country you're in. It's just kind of a broad guide so that anyone can figure out how to identify a flower that they found outside. And I have some beautiful drawings here that are going to help me explain some of the different things that you're going to see when you look at plants. So the absolute first thing that you're going to need when you are trying to identify a flower that you found outside, there are a couple things that I have here. So a few books. I have 5 wildflower books because, can't have too many. There's a couple that'll give you really good photos, and then there's a couple that are really good for information, and then when you cross-reference across all of them, you'll eventually figure out what you're looking at, because some of them, they don't all have every single flower, right? Because this one, so I live in Canada, so this one's Central Ontario. I have one that's called Plants of Southern Ontario. I have one specifically for wetlands of Ontario. So it kind of, it's hard to have just one book and then expect that it's going to have all of the flowers that you're looking at. So just be aware that if you're searching through a book and you don't find the flower that you're looking at, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that that book apparently doesn't have that. So, and then this one's specifically for wildflowers of Ontario. A lot of the ones that have plants will have the section for trees and then shrubs and then flowers and grasses or whatever else they want to have. My absolute favorite for my region, which is just north of Toronto, which is the southern plants. And I just find that the photos, the fact that they're quite, I'd say quite large compared to some other ones. The information's also really good. It's the most well-rounded out of the 5 that I have, that I would default to this book every time I go and look at flowers. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go on a hike and find a beautiful flower outside that you have no idea what it is. And you can press the flowers, but it's honestly better when you're beginning to take a picture of something. If it's a dandelion or something that's very common, it's not going to hurt to pluck a flower. And I've pressed many flowers to preserve them. But just be careful that you're not picking something that's rare and you're, going to hurt it. So the first thing you're going to need to know about your flower is the leaf structure. So every flowering plant has leaves. Well, majority of flowering plants have leaves. So the first thing you're going to do when something pops out and you look at it is know what leaf structure it is. So here are some beautiful drawings to show you just how the leaf structures are going to look. So the alternate leaf structure is the most common, and it's pretty bad, the photo, so apologies, but you can tell that it's leaves coming up on alternating sides of the stem. So the middle line is the stem, and then you've got a leaf and these blobs of leaves. And so that one is the most common, I'd say. The next one is opposite, which is every time a leaf pops up on one side, there's going to be one on the other as well. So they're paired as you go up the stem. And opposites also pretty common. These are going to be your main 2 probably that you're working with. The next is basil, which sometimes you'll see just a stem sticking out of the ground, and you'll be like, whoa, there's a stem with a flower on it. It has no leaves. If you look close spaced to the bottom, there could be other leaves that look like they're not attached to the plant and just coming out of the ground, but they are just basil leaves that are beside the plant. And then the next, so that one's basil, and it just looks like they're coming out of the ground almost, or they're very attached and you can tell that they're attached to the stem, either way. And then the last one that's the least amount of common is the whorled leaf structure. So every time, just like the opposite, every time there's one, there's a multiple. So instead of having just 2 leaves on a stem where a node is attached where a leaf comes out of, there's 3 or more. So in our area, a trillium has 3 leaves, and there's a few things that have a few, but it's honestly not one of the most common categories. The next thing that you're going to need to know about the flower or the leaf rather, because a lot of the identification characters are based on the leaf not necessarily the flower. There are some keys, and I'll show you what a key is. There are some keys that focus on the flower, but really not many. You're going to need to know the flower afterwards, but see, like this one, it does alternate, like on this left-hand side here, does alternate basal, opposite, whorl. That's like the first section you have to know. A lot of the beginning sections are going to be about the leaf. So the next thing about the leaf that you're going to have to know is whether it's simple, pinnately compound, or palmately compound. So I have pictures of these as well, bear with me. The main one that I'm going to describe as the simple is going to be most of the things that you're looking at. This is demonstrating an alternate plant, and it's simple because along the main stem, you have a leaf coming off of the exact main stem, whereas conversely, the pinnately compound has a stem and then a stem before you get to the leaf, if that makes sense. So if you compare the two, this one just has like this, is the little leaf, he's attached to the main stem, whereas this leaf is attached to a little stem attached to the bigger stem. So the last one that these ones are a little bit harder to grasp than the opposite alternate, but with some practice, it'll be fine. The palmately compound is kind of like this one, except that instead of it being grouped like this, every time you have a first stem and then a second stem, it attaches to multiple. So palmate, just think of like a handful for palm of your hand. There's going to be like a handful of leaves instead of just a couple. So it's a little bit hard, but if you Google the terms, like there'll be a bunch of photos and you can look some of them up that are going to be so much better than my drawings. So the next category that I have that's going to be kind of, as you're going through the categories, you're going to be narrowing it down to what flower it is in the keys that the books give you. So the next thing you're going to need to know is the concept between entire and then toothed. So I have some plants here I could show you, but they're all indoor plants. So I have this guy, and see how his leaf is like very smooth along the edge? Like there's no teeth on this leaf. And then I have this guy who is opposite, like we just learned, because at every node he has 2 branches. He also has toothed leaves. So there's little tiny ridges along the edge of the leaf here. That means it's toothed, whereas the other guy, it was smooth. And the last thing you're going to need to know is the flower structure. So there are some that you'll have like 1 stem and then 1 flower at the end of it. And that is called a solitary flower. I'll give you some more of the beautiful photos. So solitary flower, just like I said, 1 stem with like 1 lonely flower on top. And then there's a spike that has a main stem and all of these like little flowers scattered along the stem. And like the main thing that you take from a spike is that they don't have a branching off of the main stem. So the flower itself doesn't even have like a little stem. He just like is stuck right to the main stem. Whereas raceme is with the stem. So these two are pretty common, whereas he'll have like a little branch and then a flower, whereas these flowers are like right on the main stem. The next one is called, and these are just some of few, there actually are more flower structures, but these are, I think, the common ones. These are the ones that I find the most anyways in my area. Your country or whatever could be different. But the next one, is umbel. So you have 1 straight little stem, and then from 1 point you have a branching of different flower heads, and they all kind of come from the same area. The last one that I have to show you will kind of sometimes look like solitary in the wild. You'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, that guy has 1 stem and 1 flower, but the 1 flower could be composed of many littler flowers. Take a closer look and you can see that there are tons of tiny little flowers on top. So here's my like drawing version of that. So the one stem, and then there's like a head, like a little thing here with all kinds of tiny little flowers on top, as opposed to solitary, which just has one flower. So these are kind of some of the main things you're going to look for when you're trying to identify your flower that you found. And the key, so I showed you the key. I'll give you a closer look to this one. So key to Wildflower. So it has the leaf arrangement and then the leaf complexity, which we did. So simple, compound, all that kind of stuff. And then they have them, the next one is entire or lobed, which is kind of like toothed except softer. And then it goes into the flower color, which you'll be able to tell. Hopefully you're not colorblind, because if you are, it makes things challenging for sure. And then it'll group it and tell you the page or whatever. It'll send you to the page that corresponds to what you kind of narrowed it down. And honestly, like, it'll get to the point where some flowers that you find, and it's completely okay to just like not use the key and skip through and be like, oh, there it is, I found it. Like, you're just like, everybody's just learning. I do that occasionally too sometimes when I find that the key isn't like getting me to where I want it to go. And this one isn't necessarily the best key. The most detailed ones that you can get in our area, honestly, the Newcomb's Guide for wildflowers, you would be doing yourself a disservice if you don't have this in this area, and you're comfortable with keys. So this one, the key is actually, because that key was like one page, this key is many pages. Like, all of this is keys. They have a different order in this one. So the first question is like, is it a regular flower? And if not, then you go to the next page, and then you'll have flowers with 2 parts. So this one starts with flower and then goes to leaves. But yeah, so it's just kind of a matter of getting comfortable with your book, buying one that you like. This one, as well as the key's really good. The information is kind of lacking, and there's black and white photos, like you can tell. So I like to compare this one that has a really good key with one that has really good pictures. So if I use these two together, pretty well gonna figure out exactly what I have in my hands. I have way more information than just that. Obviously, that's just a breakdown, how to use your guide, some different leaf patterns and such. Pretty straightforward. I'm hopefully going to take you out on a flower hike sometime soon. It is April here, so there really aren't any flowers yet, but when they start to pop up, I'm going to definitely take you out and show you firsthand how we're going to identify things with the books that I have, because it's so much fun getting to know the flowers that are in your area, super, like the native ones, even like indoor flowers and stuff. Like if you buy something at Home Depot or whatever flower nursery or greenhouse that you have near you, it's sweet to be able to know how to identify them with a book or through the internet or whatever. So those are still, all those tips are hopefully going to help you go towards finding out what your flowers are in your area. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or concerns or questions, let me know. I'm not an expert, so as you can tell, I'm definitely not even an artist either. Our guest here is very sleepy, so I'm gonna let him have a nap, and I'm gonna go figure out how to edit this video. Goodbye.